Hello, and welcome to Lotus Light Teachings. Today, we're exploring a deeply transformative topic: how to navigate toxic relationships with wisdom, compassion, and strength. Together, we'll uncover insights from Buddhist philosophy and Zen teachings to help you rise above negativity and nurture inner peace. Let's walk this journey of growth and self-discovery, one step at a time. Have you ever felt like someone in your life is a constant storm, leaving you drained and unsettled? Perhaps it's a friend who never seems to support you, or a family member whose words often cut deep. Toxic relationships can feel like being caught in a misty forest, unsure of the path ahead. Let me take you back to a serene Zen monastery nestled in the mountains. Imagine this: a mist-laden morning where a Zen master sits by a tranquil pond. The water ripples gently as koi fish swim beneath the surface. A student approaches, burdened with frustration and pain, saying, "Master, I cannot find peace in my heart. There are people in my life who are like thorns, constantly wounding me. How can I protect myself?" The master, gazing at a lotus flower blooming in the pond, replies, "Do you see how the lotus grows, untouched by the mud surrounding it? If you wish to understand how to deal with those who trouble your spirit, learn from the lotus and the waters it thrives in." This story sets the tone for our exploration today. Life's challenges, especially the people who hurt us, are opportunities to grow into stronger, more compassionate individuals. But how do we begin? How can we thrive, like the lotus, even when surrounded by murkiness? In this video, we'll uncover the answers together through stories, reflections, and practical lessons inspired by Buddhist teachings. The first step in this journey is understanding. Why do toxic people behave the way they do? Often, their actions stem not from malice, but from pain. A pain so deep that it spills into their interactions with others. When we recognize this, our perspective shifts. Instead of reacting with anger or resentment, we begin to respond with clarity and strength. Let's pause for a moment to reflect. Have you ever reacted to someone's negativity, only to regret how it consumed your emotions? Perhaps it's a heated argument with a loved one or an instance where you let someone's words make you question your worth. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that their actions are not about us. They are a reflection of their unhealed wounds. Consider Anna, a caregiver who tirelessly looked after her aging father. Despite her efforts, he criticized her relentlessly. Initially, Anna felt anger and hurt, but over time, she realized his frustrations were rooted in his sense of helplessness as he faced declining health. This understanding didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped her approach him with patience and compassion, rather than defensiveness. In moments like these, we find an opportunity to grow. Toxic people challenge us not to absorb their negativity, but to transcend it. Like the lotus, we can rise above the mud, using it as nourishment for our resilience. One of the hardest lessons to learn is the art of letting go of the need to fix, control, or change others. Detachment isn't about giving up on people. It's about freeing ourselves from expectations that weigh us down. It's about trusting the flow of life. There's a beautiful Zen parable that captures this truth. Two monks were traveling together when they came across a woman struggling to cross a river. Although monastic rules forbade physical contact with women, one monk carried her across. Hours later, his companion could no longer hold back his disapproval. "How could you carry her?" he asked. The first monk replied calmly, "I set her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" How often do we carry the burdens of resentment, anger, or disappointment long after the moment has passed? Letting go doesn't mean we no longer care. It means we trust that everyone has their path to walk, and sometimes those paths must diverge. Section 1. The lotus in the mud, rising above negativity. In the quiet solitude of a pond, the lotus blooms, radiant and untouched, even though it grows amidst the murkiest waters. Its existence is not an escape from the mud, but a testament to its resilience. This sacred flower teaches us a profound truth. We, too, can rise above negativity and retain our inner purity, no matter how difficult the circumstances. A story of transformation. A Zen master once observed his student wrestling with frustration. "Master, the student lamented. "I work with someone who belittles me constantly. His words cut deep, and yet I must face him every day. How can I protect my peace?" The master, serene and calm, handed the student a glass of water and a pinch of salt. "Add the salt to the water," he instructed. The student complied, stirring the salt until it dissolved. "Now drink," the master said. The student hesitated, wincing as the bitterness touched his tongue. The master then led him to a vast pond. "Pour the same amount of salt here," he said. As the student did so, the salt dissolved into the vastness of the water, becoming imperceptible. The master turned to the student and said, "Your heart can be like this glass of water or this expansive pond. If you let negativity shrink your perspective, even a small problem can overwhelm you. But if you expand your heart and mind, the same bitterness becomes insignificant." This story invites us to question how we respond to negativity. Do we allow it to consume us, shrinking our capacity for joy and peace? Or do we cultivate an expansive perspective, one that holds space for growth, compassion, and resilience? The nature of negativity. Negativity often feels personal, as if aimed directly at our core. When someone criticizes, mocks, or dismisses us, it stirs feelings of inadequacy or anger. Yet, Buddhist teachings remind us that such emotions arise not from the actions of others, but from our own attachment to their opinions. The Buddha's teachings on impermanence, anicca, can provide solace here. Just as a storm passes through the sky without leaving a trace, so too can negativity pass through our lives if we do not cling to it. Observing the transient nature of these feelings allows us to create distance between our true self and the storm of emotions. Consider this. When was the last time someone's harsh words lingered in your mind long after they were spoken? What if, instead of holding on to them, you observed those words as fleeting clouds, unable to harm the sky of your inner peace? A question of perspective. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the ocean. You hold a handful of sand, and each grain represents a worry, insult, or frustration. When you focus on the grains in your hand, they seem significant. But if you lift your gaze, you see the vast ocean before you, limitless, powerful, and enduring. This is the perspective we cultivate when we practice mindfulness and gratitude. By expanding our awareness, we can see that life is far greater than the petty grievances that trouble us. In this broader view, negativity becomes a tiny ripple in the vast sea of our existence. Practical reflections. The path to rising above negativity begins with small, deliberate practices. 1. Engage in mindfulness meditation. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and observe your breath. As thoughts arise, label them without judgment. Anger, frustration, worry, and then let them drift away like leaves on a stream. 2. 3. Seek uplifting activities. Immerse yourself in nature, create art, or connect with loved ones who inspire positivity. These moments of beauty expand your heart and dilute the bitterness of negativity. Practice gratitude. Each day, write down 3 things that bring you joy or peace. By focusing on the light, you begin to diminish the shadows. The lotus as a teacher. The lotus does not avoid the mud. It uses the mud to grow. This is the essence of Buddhist teachings on dukkha, suffering. Challenges are not obstacles to avoid, but opportunities to deepen our wisdom and resilience. When we encounter negativity, it becomes a mirror reflecting our capacity for patience, understanding, and strength. Ask yourself, how can I use this moment of difficulty as fertile soil for my growth? What qualities, compassion, courage, or forgiveness can I cultivate in response? A story of real-life growth. Consider the story of Emily, a schoolteacher who struggled with a toxic work environment. Her colleagues often gossiped, creating an atmosphere of mistrust. Initially, Emily felt overwhelmed, questioning her worth and competence. But inspired by mindfulness practices, she began to shift her perspective. Instead of absorbing the negativity, Emily chose to focus on her students, their laughter, curiosity, and growth. She journaled her experiences, finding clarity in the process. Over time, Emily became a source of calm in her workplace, inspiring her colleagues to reflect on their behavior. Emily's story reminds us that even in the muddiest waters, we can choose to bloom. Final reflections. As we journey through life, negativity is inevitable. But like the lotus, we can rise above it, using its presence as a teacher rather than a hindrance. Each moment of challenge invites us to expand our perspective, to see not just the mud, but the infinite potential for beauty and growth within it. Ask yourself this as you move forward. How can I make my heart as expansive as the pond, allowing life's challenges to dissolve within its vastness? In answering this question, you begin the journey of transforming negativity into wisdom, resilience, and peace. Let us carry this lesson into our daily lives, not as a task to perfect, but as a practice to nurture. And like the lotus, may we continue to bloom, untouched by the mud, radiant and pure in the face of life's challenges. Section 4. Setting boundaries with wisdom. In the stillness of a bamboo grove, there is a quiet lesson for us to learn. The slender stalks bend effortlessly with the wind, yielding to its force, yet they do not break. They sway, adapt, and, when the storm subsides, they return to their upright stance, unshaken. Bamboo teaches us about resilience and, more importantly, about boundaries. The art of bending without breaking, yielding without losing ourselves. Boundaries are often misunderstood. To some, they may seem like walls that isolate us from others, a way of pushing people away. Yet in truth, boundaries are acts of compassion, not only toward ourselves but also toward those around us. They create the space for healthier, more respectful interactions. True strength lies in knowing when to say no and when to yield gracefully, like the bamboo. Sarah was a project manager at a bustling firm. Her days were a whirlwind of emails, meetings, and tight deadlines. One of her colleagues, Peter, had a tendency to demand last-minute changes, often flooding her inbox with emails after hours. Initially, Sarah complied, responding to his messages late into the night, sacrificing her personal time for fear of being seen as uncooperative. But the toll was heavy. She felt exhausted, resentful, and increasingly detached from her own needs. One evening, as she sat in the quiet of her living room, Sarah reflected on her situation. Her mind wandered to a concept she had read about in Buddhist teachings: the middle way, a path that avoids extremes and seeks balance. She realized that her habit of saying yes to Peter's endless demands was not compassion. It was avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, of setting limits, and of honoring her own boundaries. The next day, Sarah made a decision. She replied to Peter's email during her designated work hours with a polite but firm message. "I appreciate your input, but I will address this tomorrow during work hours. For urgent matters, please let me know before the end of the workday." To her surprise, Peter didn't push back. Over time, her boundaries became an unspoken rule, respected by her colleague and freeing her to reclaim her evenings. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life exists within interdependence. Boundaries are no exception. They are not barriers meant to separate but bridges that connect us in healthier ways. Imagine two rivers running parallel, each with its own distinct path. If one overflows into the other, it disrupts both, creating chaos and imbalance. But when each river remains within its natural course, they flow harmoniously, side by side. Boundaries serve as these courses, allowing us to maintain our flow without disrupting others. Compassion and boundaries are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they enhance one another. To be compassionate does not mean to endure harm or to sacrifice oneself endlessly. It means recognizing when we are reaching our limits and communicating those limits with kindness. When we set boundaries, we are not rejecting others. We are inviting them to meet us in a space of mutual respect. The Buddhist teachings on the Eightfold Path, particularly right speech and right action, offer invaluable guidance on setting boundaries. Right speech encourages us to communicate with honesty, kindness, and clarity. When setting a boundary, it's important to speak from a place of calm confidence rather than defensiveness. Phrases like, "This is what I need," or "I feel most comfortable when," create a sense of openness rather than confrontation. Consider a mother, Lisa, who loved her teenage son dearly but felt drained by his constant demands for her attention. He would interrupt her work with requests to help him with school projects, often at the last minute. One day, Lisa decided to have a gentle but firm conversation with him. She explained, "I want to support you, but I also need time for my work. Let's set a time each day when we can work on your projects together." Her son initially resisted but soon adjusted to the new routine, and their relationship grew stronger because of the clarity and structure she provided. Boundaries are an expression of self-respect. When we fail to set them, we send a subtle message to ourselves that our needs are less important than others. This imbalance often leads to resentment, exhaustion, and a sense of being unfulfilled. But when we honor our boundaries, we create an environment where our energy can flourish and our relationships can thrive. Buddhist teachings on dukkha, suffering, remind us that much of our pain comes from clinging to the idea of being liked, of avoiding conflict, or of maintaining an image of selflessness. Letting go of this clinging allows us to embrace boundaries as a form of liberation. We are not responsible for how others react to our limits. We are responsible only for upholding them with compassion and integrity. One of the most poignant stories of boundaries comes from the life of the Buddha himself. After achieving enlightenment, the Buddha traveled extensively to share his teachings. People from all walks of life came to him, seeking guidance. Yet, even the Buddha set boundaries. He often retreated into solitude for periods of meditation and reflection, understanding that his own well-being was essential for his ability to serve others. His actions remind us that self-care is not selfish. It is a necessary foundation for compassionate action. In modern life, the practice of setting boundaries can feel daunting. We fear being misunderstood or rejected. But just as the bamboo stands firm against the storm without breaking, we can learn to hold our ground with flexibility and grace. Imagine a boundary as a line drawn in soft sand, not rigid or immovable, but clear and adaptable to the tides of life. Start small. Identify one area of your life where you feel overwhelmed or overextended. Ask yourself, what do I need in this situation? How can I communicate my needs clearly and kindly? Practice speaking your truth with calmness and clarity, remembering that you are not responsible for how others choose to respond. When we set boundaries, we also teach others how to treat us. By standing firm in our values, we encourage those around us to respect our time, energy, and well-being. Over time, these practices create a ripple effect, fostering a culture of mutual respect and understanding in our relationships. As we reflect on the bamboo, swaying but unbroken, let us carry its wisdom into our daily lives. Boundaries are not walls, they are invitations. Invitations to meet each other in a space of respect, compassion, and shared growth. By setting limits, we honor not only ourselves but also the interconnectedness of all beings, creating a world where both resilience and kindness can thrive. May we all find the strength to bend without breaking, to set boundaries with wisdom, and to live in harmony with ourselves and others. And as we walk this path, let us remember that true compassion begins with honoring our own needs, an act of love that radiates outward, touching everyone we meet. Section 5. The Mirror of Self-Reflection. In a quiet monastery perched high in the mountains, a student sat before his Zen master, troubled by a question that had plagued him for years. "Master," he began hesitantly, "why do I always find myself surrounded by manipulative people? Why do I attract those who deceive, criticize, or take advantage of me?" The master smiled gently and handed the student a dusty mirror. "Clean this," he said. The student wiped it until the surface gleamed. "Now look into it. What do you see?" "My reflection," replied the student, confused. "Do you see the dust anymore?" the master asked. "No, master. It's gone." Just as the mirror reflects accurately only when it is clean, so too must your mind be clear of anger, fear, and insecurity to see the truth of your relationships, the master explained. When you clean your inner mirror, you'll see that those you attract are often reflections of the wounds and fears you carry within. The student's question may seem universal. Many of us have encountered people who drain our energy or challenge our peace. Yet, How often do we pause to examine why these patterns occur? The Buddha taught that our suffering is not inflicted upon us by the world but arises from within. In the same way, our reactions to toxic people often reveal unresolved emotions and inner struggles. Self-reflection is the key to untangling this cycle. It is a gentle but profound practice that allows us to turn the gaze inward and ask, what does this situation reveal about me? What can I learn about my fears, desires, or expectations from my interactions with others? The Buddha once said, "You are not punished for your anger. You are punished by your anger." This teaching is not only a cautionary tale about the dangers of holding on to resentment, but also an invitation to investigate the roots of our emotions. Anger, fear, and pain often act as mirrors, reflecting parts of ourselves that remain unhealed. When we encounter someone who frustrates or hurts us, their behavior may amplify a hidden wound within us, one that we have yet to address. Consider Rachel, a young woman who often felt hurt by her friends' indifference. She longed for validation and grew resentful when her efforts to please others went unnoticed. Through therapy and mindfulness practice, Rachel realized that her need for approval stemmed from childhood experiences of neglect. She sought recognition from others to fill an emptiness she carried within herself. Rachel's story is not uncommon. Many of us seek in others what we struggle to give ourselves: love, acceptance, and validation. When we recognize this pattern, we can begin the journey of healing, breaking free from cycles of hurtful relationships and self-sabotage. Reflecting on our inner world requires courage. It means facing not only the pain others have caused, but also the ways in which we have contributed to our suffering. This is not about blame, but about taking responsibility for our growth. Buddhist teachings on the Four Noble Truths remind us that while suffering is an inevitable part of life, it also holds the seeds of liberation. By understanding its causes, we gain the power to transform it. A practical way to engage in self-reflection is through journaling. At the end of each day, take a few moments to write about your interactions and emotions. Ask yourself, what made me feel hurt or angry today? What might this emotion reveal about my fears or unmet needs? Over time, this practice can uncover patterns and help you respond to challenges with greater clarity and compassion. Imagine holding a mirror to your own soul. What would you see? Would you see fear, longing, or unresolved pain? Or would you see resilience, compassion, and strength waiting to emerge? The act of cleaning this mirror, of looking inward and embracing what you find, is the essence of self-reflection. Section 6. Detachment and letting go. One day, two monks were traveling along a muddy road when they came across a woman unable to cross a river. Without hesitation, one of the monks lifted her onto his back, carried her across, and set her down on the other side. Hours later, his companion, still fuming, exclaimed, "How could you carry that woman? We are not supposed to touch women." The first monk turned to him calmly and replied, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This parable captures the essence of detachment, the ability to release what no longer serves us. Letting go does not mean forgetting or abandoning. It means freeing ourselves from the weight of anger, resentment, or the need to control. It is an act of liberation that creates space for joy, peace, and growth. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. We cling to people, situations, or outcomes, believing they are essential to our happiness. Yet, life is impermanent, and clinging only deepens our pain when change inevitably comes. To let go is to embrace impermanence, trusting that life's natural flow will carry us where we need to be. Consider Alex, a father who struggled to accept his adult daughter's decisions. He wanted her to pursue a stable career, but she chose a path that seemed risky and unconventional. His attempts to guide her were met with resistance, leading to tension and distance in their relationship. During a meditation retreat, Alex reflected on his attachment to controlling his daughter's future. He realized that his fear of her failure was rooted in his own insecurities. By letting go of his need to dictate her path, Alex was able to approach their relationship with greater trust and openness. He learned to support her without trying to control her, creating a stronger bond between them. Letting go often feels like losing control, but in reality, it is an act of trust. Trust in ourselves, in others, and in the unfolding of life. It is a leap of faith that frees us from the chains of expectation and allows us to experience the present moment fully. Detachment also requires forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harmful behavior. It means releasing the burden of resentment. Holding on to anger is like carrying a heavy stone. It weighs us down and prevents us from moving forward. When we forgive, we set down the stone and walk unencumbered. This practice can be challenging, especially when the pain runs deep. But as the Buddha taught, forgiveness begins within. By cultivating compassion for our own imperfections, we develop the capacity to extend that compassion to others. We recognize that everyone, including ourselves, is on a journey of growth and healing. Imagine a bird taking flight. It carries nothing but the wind beneath its wings, free to soar wherever the currents take it. This is the freedom that comes with letting go, freedom from the past, from the need to fix or control, and from the weight of resentment. It is a freedom that allows us to embrace life with open arms. As you reflect on your own life, consider what you may still be carrying. Is it anger toward someone who wronged you? Guilt over a past mistake? Fear of losing control? Whatever it is, imagine setting it down, just as the monk set down the woman at the river. Feel the lightness that comes with release. Letting go is not an act of weakness. It is an act of courage. It is the willingness to trust in the unfolding of life, to embrace the unknown with an open heart. In doing so, we create space for new possibilities, for healing, and for the deep peace that arises when we no longer cling. In the quiet stillness of the present moment, ask yourself, what am I ready to release? What freedom awaits me on the other side of letting go? As you sit with these questions, remember that the path to liberation is not a single step but a gentle unfolding, one moment at a time. May we all find the strength to clean our inner mirrors, to see ourselves with clarity, and to let go of what no longer serves us. And in doing so, may we discover the boundless joy and peace that lie within. Section 7. Walking the Path of the Lotus. In the stillness of a tranquil pond, the lotus flower blooms, pure and untarnished, even though its roots are deeply embedded in the mud. This duality, the lotus's beauty and the murkiness of its origins, holds a profound lesson for us all. Life, too, often places us in challenging, messy, or even painful situations. Yet, like the lotus, we have the ability to rise above these circumstances, not by avoiding them, but by transforming them into the foundation of our growth. A teacher once observed one of her students growing increasingly frustrated with a disruptive classmate. The troublemaker interrupted lessons, distracted others, and seemed to thrive on chaos. The frustrated student approached the teacher one day, venting his anger. "Why don't you discipline him?" he demanded. "He's ruining everything for the rest of us." The teacher listened patiently and then offered an unexpected solution. "Tomorrow, I'd like you to spend some time teaching him a skill you're good at," she said. The student was incredulous. "Why should I help him when he's the one causing all the problems?" "Because," the teacher replied with a gentle smile, "sometimes the best way to understand someone is to walk a step in their shoes. And sometimes the best way to strengthen yourself is to face what frustrates you with kindness." Reluctantly, the student agreed. Over the next week, as he spent time with his disruptive classmate, he began to see glimpses of vulnerability, an eagerness to learn, hidden beneath the boy's behavior. The act of teaching required patience, and as the student practiced patience, he found that his anger began to dissolve. In its place, a sense of understanding and even empathy began to grow. By the end of the week, the classmate's behavior had softened, and even though he was not yet perfect, the frustrated student had transformed in a way that surprised him. He no longer felt burdened by anger. Instead, he felt a quiet strength, as though he had stepped into a deeper, wiser version of himself. In our interactions with difficult people, we often feel as though we are being tested. Their words or actions may trigger emotions like frustration, resentment, or even despair. Yet, Buddhist philosophy teaches us that these moments are not merely challenges to overcome. They are opportunities to deepen our spiritual practice. The Buddha spoke of dukkha, the pervasive nature of suffering in life. This suffering arises not because the world is inherently cruel, but because of our attachment to how we believe things should be. When others act in ways that disrupt our peace, we often cling to the idea that they should be different, better, or more considerate. This clinging creates friction within us, a gap between reality and our expectations. The path to freedom lies not in changing others, but in transforming our relationship with these moments of tension. In the face of toxicity, we are presented with a choice: to react impulsively or to respond with awareness. Reaction is the easy path, often driven by ego and emotion. But response, the mindful, measured choice, is where our growth begins. Each time we choose to respond with patience or compassion, we build a bridge between who we are and who we wish to become. Imagine yourself standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward resentment, anger, and the perpetuation of negativity. The other leads toward understanding, forgiveness, and peace. The Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, and so on, serve as a guide to help us choose the second path, even when the first seems more tempting. The lotus flower, rooted in the mud, does not deny the existence of the dirt. Instead, it uses the nutrients of the mud to grow, pushing itself toward the light. Similarly, the difficult people and situations we encounter are not obstacles to avoid but stepping stones for our growth. What if, instead of resenting the mud in our lives, we began to see it as the fertile ground from which our strength emerges? Take, for example, a young woman named Clara. Clara worked in a demanding office where one of her co-workers, Mike, had a habit of taking credit for her ideas. Initially, Clara felt angry and victimized. She wanted to confront him harshly, to expose his behavior in front of their colleagues. But before acting, Clara paused to reflect. She asked herself, "What does this situation reveal about me? What can I learn from this?" Through her introspection, Clara realized that her anger stemmed not only from Mike's actions, but also from her own fear of being overlooked. She decided to address the situation calmly, speaking to Mike privately. "I've noticed that some of my contributions have been presented as yours," she said, "and I'd like to find a way to ensure both our efforts are recognized." Her tone was firm but kind, and to her surprise, Mike admitted that he hadn't been aware of how his actions affected her. Over time, their dynamic improved. But more importantly, Clara grew stronger in her ability to advocate for herself without letting anger cloud her judgment. Buddhism also teaches us the importance of compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. When we encounter toxic individuals, it's easy to spiral into self-blame or self-doubt, questioning whether we are somehow responsible for their behavior. But compassion reminds us that we, too, are worthy of understanding and kindness. Just as we offer patience to others, we must extend the same grace to ourselves. This self-compassion can be cultivated through mindfulness practices. Take a moment to sit quietly and focus on your breath. As thoughts of frustration or pain arise, acknowledge them without judgment. Imagine them as clouds passing through the sky, temporary and insubstantial. With each exhale, let go of the tension they bring. Over time, this practice can help you create space within yourself for peace, even in the presence of external chaos. As we walk the path of the lotus, we may encounter moments when letting go feels impossible. The wounds inflicted by others can run deep, and the idea of forgiveness may feel like surrendering to injustice. But forgiveness, as the Buddha taught, is not for the benefit of the other person. It is a gift we give to ourselves. To forgive is to unburden our hearts, to release the weight of anger and allow joy to take its place. The story of the teacher and her student reminds us that growth often comes not from avoiding challenges, but from leaning into them with curiosity and courage. Each toxic interaction is a mirror, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that are ready to evolve. Patience, empathy, and resilience are not traits we are born with. They are skills we develop, one difficult moment at a time. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did I learn from my interactions today? Did I react impulsively, or did I respond with awareness? What strengths did I uncover within myself? By approaching each day with this mindset, you begin to see even the muddiest waters as an opportunity to bloom. And so, the path of the lotus is not a straight line but a journey of rising and falling, of striving toward the light while remaining rooted in the earth. It is a path of transformation, where each challenge becomes a stepping stone and each toxic encounter becomes an invitation to grow. May we all walk this path with courage, patience, and an open heart. May we rise above the mud, not in spite of it, but because of it, embracing the lessons it offers. And may we bloom, like the lotus, pure and radiant, a testament to the strength and beauty within us all. Embracing the path of the lotus. As we reach the end of our journey today, let's return to the lotus. Rooted in the mud, it grows toward the light, untouched by the murky waters below. Its beauty is a reminder that life's challenges are not obstacles but stepping stones toward inner transformation. When we encounter toxic people, we are presented with choices. Will we let their actions define our emotions, or will we rise above their negativity with compassion and strength? Will we carry the weight of resentment, or will we release it and create space for peace and joy? Let me leave you with this thought. Every interaction, no matter how difficult, holds a lesson. What have you learned about yourself from your encounters with toxic people? And what steps will you take today to cultivate resilience, compassion, and freedom within yourself? Remember, the path to inner peace begins with small, mindful steps. If this message resonates with you, share your reflections in the comments. Let's continue this conversation together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings. Your support helps us spread wisdom and light to more people around the world. Until next time, may you walk the path of the lotus with courage, grace, and unwavering peace.